Hello, everyone's Forest Focus as Nottingham Forest turn their attention to Sunday's Premier League game against Southampton on the pitch and the rest of the transfer window off it. We'll discuss this weekend's game in full and the news that the Reds are once again keen on Brentford's Yoane Wissa in the company of, first of all, Pete Blackburn. Pete, morning, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Happy to be back. Nice
yes.
to be on with again.
Yes, grateful to you and Temps for doing double duty. Consecutive days are very good of you. Michael Temple, morning, how are you?
Morning, Matt. Good, thank you.
Good. Simon Bristow, aka Our Glorious Banners on Twitter. Good to have you back. How are you this morning?
Good, thank you, Matt. Yeah, nice to return.
Well, it's very good to have you back. Like I say, we'll talk Southampton primarily first, and then we'll get into Yoane Wissa and some other transfer news that is out there this morning and out there in the last couple of days. But Simon, kick us off. How are you feeling about this Southampton game in the context of having just played Liverpool and the league table with, Liverpool top, Southampton at the bottom? How are you feeling about this one?
I guess, lots of people will be thinking about Old Forest, as I now call it, because we're a completely different beast. An Old Forest in the Championship would have beaten top of the league and then lost to bottom of the league, while we were sat somewhere between 14th and 17th for eternity. But we aren't that beast anymore. We are a club that has had a massive transformation, certainly this season, and I have full faith that everything is prepared, that we go into Sunday with the same attitude of it's another really important game, and the players will be ready and we'll be going to win it.
Morning to everyone who's with us, by the way. Apologies for the late start. My email didn't send twice to these lads for the link, and then I was just scrambling. In fact, I've been scrambling all morning, totally disorganised as ever. So sorry for the late start, but good to have everyone with us. Are you feeling any more reserved, Temps? I don't think you are, because you're analytical and you're going to tell me we're going to win this game comfortably.
Yeah, I think it should be one of our most comfortable games of the season. I don't think there is any reason to think of any other outcome than a Forest win. It's a bit like poker. You beat better players with good plays, but you beat worse players with good cards. And if we pick our best team, don't try to rest folk, don't try to do anything too funky, just stick to the formula and stick our best 11 out there, we're going to beat Southampton. So I don't think we will overanalyze it. We don't have to rest players. We've got this nice run now, just playing one game a week at the weekend with nothing midweek to be concerned about. So I hope and expect to see the best Forest 11 picked, and I hope and expect to see a Forest win.
Pete, you lurched through a psychological crisis yesterday in the company of Temps and Gary as we discussed everything that's happening. Do you see it any differently? I do feel like this is one of those games where the pressure is definitely on us because everyone's going to view it as a must-win game. I mean, I view it as a must-win game as well, to be honest. Does that throw any worries out for you or not?
Not desperately. I mean, I'm not adding an awful lot to what the other chaps have said, but it just feels like a very different team and a very different organisation right now, with Nuno very much head on all the time, keeping feet on the ground. Just doesn't desperately worry me. There's always going to be those moments where you might slip up, but I'm not viewing this in that sort of anxious way that I certainly would have been perhaps in times gone by. I mean, for me, in the wake of Tuesday night and that incredibly sort of spirited battling performance, there'll be plenty of people who watch that, and I guess particularly Liverpool fans, sort of stereotyping us as the won't go away, defend until the bitter end, organised side. And we are all of those things, and I think we should be proud that we're all of those things. But I think we're also much more than that. And I guess the model for this one is that West Ham game. Play against a struggling side, potentially mentally fragile, who come to the City Ground, and we dominate from the off. It might not be our normal game, but I think we had the majority of the possession in that one, 19, 20 shots, probably double the amount of passes that we had against Liverpool. And that's, I think, where we can go now. We're a different side. We can do more than one thing. We've got different options. We have bringing in someone like Elliot Anderson into our midfield means that we've got a player in that sort of deep line role who can help us control a game. I just think that the team is set up to play in different ways now, and there just should be absolutely no fear for us here. And this is a side that lost 5-0 to Brentford at home, a week ago or whatever it was. I just don't think we allow ourselves to be the anomaly in this Southampton run. Nobody scored more than 2 goals for them. Nobody has more than 2 assists for them. They're in the bottom 3 for all of the metrics, apart from possession and accurate passes, and we know that doesn't necessarily lead you anywhere. So for me, it's no fear. I totally believe in the way that Nuno has people and their feet on the ground. We've got all the tools we need to unlock them. And there's no complacency, because you obviously always have to go out and win the platform first. You have to do that work, and we all know that. But we expect them to do that because that's what they always do. They always put in that shift, and from there, I think we've got the quality to beat them by several, all being well, and hopefully improve that goal difference that could be crucial.
Have you just been given a giant pitcher of water, Temps, or is it the kind of this is near, this is far away, Father Ted thing? That looked like the biggest pitcher of water you've been given there.
Lads, you've got to get your 2 litres a day in. And yeah, I am mildly embarrassed that someone just delivered it to me live on your podcast.
Oh,
I didn't ask for it. I just want to be nice.
Oh, that's kind. Lovely.
Well, I wasn't going to mention you moaning about all your fan mail this morning,
Yes,
but we're scoring points.
That's categorically not what happened at all. That is not true. People are going to think that. Some idiot on Twitter said I got sacked by the post as well. It was completely false, but that's more egregious than what Tam
Sorry
said,
about
certainly. That really annoyed me. Right.
Have you got a question?
Yeah, I've got lots of questions. Picking up on something Pete said there, and I dropped in our WhatsApp chat actually a TikTok, because we're so cool, that I put out that Liverpool fans latched onto, just moaning about the way we went about it on Tuesday, saying we should have lost the game 6-1, 5-1, 6-0, 7-0, whatever. It was anti-football type stuff. I assume that doesn't bother you at all, does it?
There's a bit of this from Tom Kearney when he was in the studio doing the analysis on our Monday night football game. This method we found to camp, sit deep, be really difficult to break down, but spring breaks with lightning efficiency. And I'd flip that on its head. How many teams take pride in a possession stat when they spend 25 minutes a game passing the ball between centre half and fullback with no pressure? We play effective football in possession. It was a style of play that was designed to ease us away from trouble. We've assembled a set of players that whose blend of skills are so adept at playing it. It's now become our method for going on the front foot. Concede the ball, draw them in. I mean, you could almost see it against Wolves, couldn't you? And I think the Elliot Anderson pass to Morgan Gibbs-White through the press, him playing the 1-2 of Elanga and then scoring, was a perfect example of how our style works. And we draw teams on. They get sucked in, and then we're quick, efficient, and creative enough to turn that into the perfect counter, yielding however many goals it's been this season. So no, there's a very clear method. Even those teams that have studied it and analysed it haven't found a way to stop it. So if Liverpool knew what we were going to do, pick a team to deal with it and try and overcome it. They were frustrated because despite their early pressure, they didn't score and we did. And I know you're not asking at me in terms of analysing any particular game. It's a style that works for us. It's a style that we're going to continue to deploy. And if Liverpool fans are upset with the result, they should look at the finishing of their front three in that game.
Yeah, they didn't have a shot on goal or shot on target until 60 minutes. So no, it doesn't stack up at all for me. Going back to Southampton, Simon, that makes you so comfortable that Old Forest are gone? Is it Nuno? Is it the quality of the players? What are the factors that make you so chilled about this?
I think both of those things. I think the general evolution of the club. Clearly, we are much more serious across the board. There's huge improvements at the training ground, huge numbers of staff, huge investment into things like analytics that enables us to perform better on the pitch. And then, we've got a manager who's spent the entire season being really clear about it's all about the next game. We're focused on the next game. So, as soon as Liverpool finished, I'm sure there was a bit of, probably a bit of disappointment, but also a bit of, patting each other on the back for a great performance. But very quickly, Nuno would have been, right, what's Southampton? How do we go about beating them? What's the plan? Players probably had a day off yesterday, but they're back in today working on that plan to go out there and win the next game. And then, hopefully we win on Sunday, and then it will be about the next game and so on and so on. So I think, there's a load of factors that makes me more confident that we aren't like that Old Forest that used to have a great performance and then follow up with a real shocker. So, I'm very confident that we should win the game because of what the other guys have said. We are a team that is performing really well. Southampton are bottom of the league. They're bottom of the league for a reason. I know they've had a change of manager, but we should be going into that game confident, and it would take something remarkable for us not to win it. Either Southampton are going to have to perform unlike any performance they've had so far this season, or we're going to have a shocker.
Probably both. Just a word on Southampton before we get into lineups. Obviously, they play tonight against Man United as we record this. I don't think it'll change anyone's thinking particularly, but if they do pull out a good performance there, then it obviously is a small factor, I guess. They're not, I mean, Pete, on them, I don't think they're a terrible individual. They're not like just racked with awful players. I think they've got good players, but not enough of them. I mean, you look at Dibbling, I like Fernandez. They've got 3 or 4 Premier League decent players, I think. Maybe I'm even being disrespectful there, but as a unit, there's not enough there, is there?
No, I think they're miles off squad wise, to be honest. As you say, I think there's probably 3 or 4 that I'd be interested in having in our squad at most, and I probably wouldn't be interested in having any of them in the starting 11, apart from possibly Tyler Dibbling and Kyle Walker-Peters might have a shot. I don't think they're great individuals, and I don't think they're a great collective either. And I think you've seen that they're a little bit broken, given that a change of manager and a change of style and going back to something slightly more rigid and basic might be the wrong word, but I guess back to basics is the way you'd frame it. It hasn't really yielded anything. There's been no great change there. I just don't think there's an awful lot of quality in that side whatsoever, and nothing really for us to fear greatly, to be honest. So I just think it's one of those games that's totally about us. I think, usually when we do these opposition previews, there's a lot of talk about balance and what we need to fear as well as what we can do to the opposition. In this one, for me, it's just all about what we can do and how we go out there with absolute intent to dominate the game and take it to them.
Let's get into our lineups then, but just before we do that, just a reminder, obviously double loyalty stamps at the Trent Navigation, but primarily on Sunday you can watch it will enjoy all the build-up. They're open from 10 a.m. for breakfast, and then they'll have the early quiz with Fodder, so get your brains into gear with that. Over 300 people played the Liverpool game, so obviously do enjoy that, and then get down to the City Ground and get back to Nav after to enjoy the celebrations, we hope. Right, let's get into our lineups. One of them's got some changes in, and I have genuinely made a few changes because I think there's some merit in it. But we'll get into the more straightforward ones first of all. This is the unchanged one that both Simon and Temp sent to me separately. People send them all without knowing what the others have done. So it's Sells in goal, Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo, Williams, obviously, Anderson and Yates in midfield, Elanga, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, and Chris Wood. Was it just straightforward for you, Simon? These are our best players. Let's roll them out again.
Yeah, as Temp said earlier, play our best 11 and we will win football matches. This is our best 11 as it stands. Assuming there's no injuries or huge levels of fatigue from Tuesday night, then put that 11 out, and I would back that 11 to win the football match on Sunday. Simple as that.
Any temptation at all, Temps, for any of those players to come out, or is it easy for you?
Easy for me to pick our best 11, which is, as Simon articulated, what I feel we should do. However, if Jota Silva gets a game, if Dominguez comes in for Yatesy, maybe even if Marino plays for Williams, they're probably the 3 that can consider themselves in with a chance. And if we make 1 or 2 of those, I think we're still fine. I think the minute we make 3 or more changes, we are taking Southampton a little bit lightly. However, if someone's 80% fit, feels it a little bit in their calf, it's a chance to give them the rest. But this is the team that I would pick. They're the 3 players that I think are most likely to get a start if we decide we need to rest them. But I hope we give this game the respect it deserves, pick this team, make wholesale changes on 60 minutes if we find ourselves in a comfortable lead, and just do a business-like job, come away with the 3 points. There'll be some temptation. This is the game with the shortest odds of Forest winning since we've been promoted to the Premier League. Southampton, we're almost unbackable. I think the bookies have pegged Southampton at 7s. So let's get it won. Get this team picked. Get out of there. If Marino, Silva, or Dominguez come into it, fine. But no need for wholesale changes.
I think that'll be the plan. Chris Wood, 60 minutes. if we're 2-0 up or 3-0 up, that'll be the dream scenario. Just picking up on what the chap said there, Pete. This is our best 11. There is, a debate over that a little bit. I think around Yates and Dominguez, a lot of people would want Dominguez in that starting 11. Your team has got Dominguez in for Yates, and I don't know if that's tactical based on he's the better player or just fitness or what. But what's your thinking there? And then we'll get into specifics of Yates v Dominguez.
Well, I think this has got the potential to be the most boring opposition preview we've ever done, I guess, because we're all sort of saying the same thing. So I'm sorry about that. I totally agree with the analysis. I think we go in with our best 11, and certainly from the information that we've got available, obviously the medical department will play a huge role in that, but it's not something we have any access to. And I agree with Temps that if there's the odd change, one or two, based on that sort of information in terms of the effort that the players have been putting in and whether they're in that sort of dangerous zone in terms of their fitness and their well-being and such like, then you can make those changes. And I can see, I think Moreno would come in and do fine. I think the same for Dominguez, clearly, because I've got him in my lineup, and probably both wide men as well. And to be honest, I wouldn't even be that desperately concerned if it was a game where Taiwo started. But my instinct is you go as strong as you can. You try and get the game won as early as you can, and there's your opportunity for change and rest if you can earn it. And for me, best 11 is the way to go, as the chaps have both said. I personally think that Dominguez is probably in that 11. Certainly in a game where we're looking to be dominant, to impose ourselves on the game, and we're less concerned about the opposition without any sense of complacency. It's definitely much more about us than it's about them. Dominguez coming in, I think we don't lose a huge amount of the strengths that Yates brings us, certainly the ones that we really need in this game, but we add. So, I mean, Dominguez has some of that know-how. I think that Yates does. He can do some of that, being frankly a pain in the arse that Yates can do and managing the game in that sense. But he also just brings us a huge amount of energy. He's so good pressing. I think we're going to look to be further up the pitch in this game and getting at them and winning the ball higher than we have done in more recent outings. And he gives us a lot on the ball. He's brilliant in interlinking with those attacking players. He can drift into those wide areas or into the number 10 position. He's another threat. And I think both him and Anderson are capable of doing the sort of the dirty work and the jobs that they will need to do against any Premier League lineup. But they just have more to their games than Yates does in terms of being able to control the game, join in with the attack, create opportunities. Dominguez can carry the ball. He can make those passes. He links really well, and he gives us another goal-scoring option as well. So for me, that's the team I'd be going with. No disrespect whatsoever to Yates. He's an absolutely vital part of what we do. I just don't think we desperately need those particular strengths he brings in this game, and Dominguez gives us a few sort of options that Yates probably can't.
Pete, can I just ask you a quick question? You mentioned there the potential to rest Woody for Taiwo. Chris Wood's on 82 Premier League goals, and he's got a good chance of being one of, I think it's 30-odd players to get to 100 in his career. Balance that against how vital he is for us in the big games and potentially the need to rest him every now and again at 32. But I remember in a cricket sense, they started to ask Jimmy Anderson to miss the odd series in the West Indies, whatever. It was a case of good luck telling him, because he's on course for 600-700 wickets. Do you think that applies here? Do you think they look to Chris Wood now and ask him, do you fancy a rest, a week on the beach, whatever? He says, no thanks, I've got this personal milestone to reach and I'm flying at the spearhead of this team.
Yeah, at the risk of being boring again, I totally agree with everything you said. I don't think there's any chance Chris Wood would want to take that opportunity. I think sometimes, I guess, in a sort of medical sense, you have to take that decision for the players as much as you can. I don't expect that to be an issue for Chris Wood, and I think the evidence of that is that he goes away on international duty the other side of the world and comes back and plays games. It doesn't seem to be an issue for him. There's nothing obvious in his game that suggests that this is a player whose age is taking a toll on him, or the work rate that he's being put through in this Forest side, which is significant, is taking a toll on him. He does that brilliant job leading the press from the front when we do trigger it, albeit slightly deeper than a lot of teams do, and managing our shape out of possession, him and Morgan Gibbs-White in that sort of front line of the block. But he doesn't seem to be struggling. I don't expect it to be an issue. My point really is just he's one of those where if there is an issue that the medical team report, I'd be okay with it. I wouldn't be desperately worried if we needed Taiwo to come on and do the job. But as it stands, I think I'd fully expect Chris Wood to be in there, and I fully expect him to be on the score sheet again.
Thanks to Pete Brockwell, and I saw Peter as well earlier in the chat, reminding people just to hit like if you haven't already. There's 300 people watching, so do us a favour and just hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're so close to 10,000, so that'd be great to get there. Just on Yates and Dominguez, Simon, I don't know if I've asked you this before. I was reading on Twitter a few people discussing, as ever, Ryan Yates and Nico Dominguez, and I feel a bit sorry for Nico because I think he does a really good job, but he's often the one who misses out. Every manager picks Yates. Literally every manager going back to Martin O'Neill always seems to end up with Yatesy in the team, including Nuno, who knows a lot more about football than me and all of us, no doubt, of course, as well. What do you think about Dominguez, I guess, as much as anything? Is he unlucky? Would he be in ahead of Yates for you?
Look, I think if it's Pete's team that starts on Sunday, no one's got any complaints because Dominguez is an excellent footballer. And every time he's come into the team, especially recently where he's had a couple of starts, he's been probably arguably, the best player on the pitch on those occasions. So it is really harsh on him to not have him in the starting 11. But as you say, every manager picks Yates. There's something about, especially at home, I think there's something about having Yates in the team that a manager seems to like. He's the homegrown player that gets everything about the club, gets the team going, gets the fans going. So there is that factor. And I know it's, we're talking about elite level Premier League. And so it should be about their ability on the pitch, not just how good a motivator they are. But I guess that's why managers go for Yates. But Dominguez is an exceptional player. So there's no issue with making that change if Nuno decides to make that change, as far as I'm concerned. I think as well, this is probably where we've got to start getting to, where we've got 2 or 3 players in every position that are exceptional. And we probably saw a little bit of that on Tuesday night. And that's no disrespect to like a Jota Silva who comes on. Can't remember if he replaced Hudson-Odoi or Elanga at the time. But you could just see he wasn't quite at that level. Or maybe it was a tough game for him to kind of get into instantly. And if we are going to be in Europe next season, we're going to need our bench options to be challenging every single position to be starting options. Otherwise, you will start to see a bit of an issue in big games where we've not got that difference maker. Or we're relying on, we've got 2 or 3 players on the bench that can be difference makers. Our biggest difference maker on the bench at the moment is probably Morato, because as soon as he comes on, that's it, game done. And we probably need 2 or 3 options that are in the attacking positions that you can put them on and you think, right, well, something might change here. There might be a spark. And I think it's no disrespect to Jota Silva, Ramon Sosa. They've done a really good job coming into the team this year, adapting to a new division and league and country, and I can see potential there. But I do think that kind of Yates-Dominguez argument is an interesting one for us moving forwards of, right, well, it needs to be Elanga and who's the other player that could come in for Elanga, and we're not saying, oh, it's weakening our team. It's a real interesting debate about who's the better of the two.
I think so. I just wonder if Yates will stick rigidly to any tactical plan, and I think managers are going to love that. And I'm not saying Dominguez doesn't, but Yates will execute to the best of his ability, whatever people think about it. He'll do everything a manager wants him to do, and I think that's what they love, to be honest. Because players will get managers a sack, and Ryan Yates isn't the kind of player who would do that. People see what I'm saying. DC asked in the chat about opinions on Elanga. Said he lost the ball easily on Tuesday. I mean, I think that's just because he's been positive and trying to take people on, and I don't mind him losing the ball. I think he's exceptional, and we discussed his output and quality and end product yesterday with Gary. So no, I'm totally happy with Elanga, and he's in my team, which I'll put up now. And I agree with everything everyone said, but I've just got a couple of changes in it for reasons kind of I'll outline. The ones Temps mentioned actually. So it'll be Sells in goal, Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo, Alex Moreno, Dominguez and Anderson in midfield, Jota on the right, Gibbs White, Elanga on the left, and Wood as striker. And all of this is predicated on what the medical department think, really, because they'll know exactly what the condition of all these players. But I saw Nico with cramp again. He's just done a job against Mo Salah. He's probably physically and mentally knackered. And we've got Alex Moreno, who's just as good in many ways. Who could come into that team, and it feels like an opportunity to use the squad when we can. I don't want to pile everything on Nico and have it build up and eventually him have a dip in form if there's an opportunity to bring someone in like Moreno, who I think is a really good player. So see what the medical department say on him. Same with Hudson-Odoi. He looked absolutely knackered on Tuesday. And again, I think I said this to Pete in a WhatsApp, just worry that he pulls a hamstring while sprinting or something. If there's an opportunity to rest him with a replacement in Jota who can do a good job in this game. And I think Elanga likes playing on the left as well, more so. I think he's the one who's been shifted out. So I could see us making those changes and I'd be happy with those. And Dominguez, for the reasons we discussed, I think Dominguez needs a game. That would be my team. I mean, I guess Temps has spoken about it already, but would any of you mind that team at all if we saw it?
I'd have no great issues with it. I mean, I just wonder if it's necessary change. That's the only thing. And again, it's difficult to have these hypotheticals, isn't it? Because we just don't know what the data is going to show or how those players are going to pull up. But it's not a desperately small amount of time between the games. We've got days on Southampton, and it's still more or less another week until the next one after. We're not in that situation now where we're in the thick of cup and league football. So I don't think we change unless it's necessary. And for example, in that team, you suddenly got an entirely new left side. And I know Elanga's obviously played there before and such like, but I don't know if those two have ever played any significant minutes in games before. And my instinct is you try and get the game won before you do the resting and the managing of minutes. But I think you're right in that if there are issues, I mean, I think Hudson-Odoi for me might be the most obvious one because I think it's pretty clear that he's been carrying the odd knock. He's definitely not sort of at his absolute full fitness. And I know players will tell you that they probably never really were during their career, but he's probably the one I'd be most sympathetic to because just from the eye test, it does look like he's probably playing through it a little bit. But I would do the minimum possible, get it won, and then do the resting after that, if at all possible.
People in the chat mentioning Sosa instead of Jota, which is fair. I just think Jota over the course of the season's probably done a little bit more. What about Alex Moreno's status in the squad then, Temps? He hasn't done anything wrong, and I think he's a senior player. At some point, he's going to want minutes, but he's only in inverted commas a lone player. Well, how do you view his overall status?
Villa fans love Moreno, and he had that hamstring injury which kept him out for a while and never quite recovered or recovered his minutes. I was really impressed with him at the start of the season. We had a couple of games when he was terrorised by opposition wing, and Nico's come in, and while he has his doubters, I think he's had his best 4 or 5 weeks in a Forest shirt. Looks more comfortable in a 4, which he wasn't at first. He was signed as a bit of a lookalike for Jed Spence, and then we did away with wingbacks by and large. Didn't require him. I think he's equally comfortable at playing right and left side. He's probably a bit of a victim of Awoniyi coming in and being 4 times as good as anybody expected him to be. But I've come round on Nico. I think we're looking at him through the lens of Murillo, Milenkovic and Aina, i.e. the other 3 members of the back 4 having exceptional seasons and being exceptional players. I don't think he's quite on their plane, but he's done well for me. And I think on merit, he keeps Moreno out the side. But they're the 2 selection debates, which I think are the most keenly contested. Moreno for Williams, Dominguez for Yates. I think there is a gulf between Elanga and Jota Silva. And I do prefer Jota Silva in the side to Sosa. I think that in the cup game a couple of weekends ago, Silva ran the game. He was the outstanding player in the first half, created the most, looked the most dangerous, looked the most accomplished. But there's no doubt in my mind about our best 11 at the minute. I think they're 3 changes which don't necessarily weaken the side, weaken our chances of winning, and of course you're going to get a lot from Elanga if he's a 25-minute impact sub. But I think the team that drew Liverpool deserved to start against Southampton.
Yeah, excellent. I think Moreno is Nico's nailed the place down, and I think he would come back into my team. But then if Moreno comes in and has a blinder, so You never know. You never know. Thanks very much to Ant for £2. That's very kind of you. If anyone wants to help us get to 10,000 subscribers, would certainly appreciate that very much. Yes, thank you, Ant. Right, let's go back to the main background, and we'll talk transfers for the rest of the show. 1 second, sorry. Right, Yoane Wissa, a report by John Percy in the Telegraph saying that if Taiwo is sold and West Ham and the team that are in for him, Forest have lined up Yoane Wissa as a genuine target. Arsenal are interested as well. Vissa's 28. He's got 12 goals this season. I'm sure we've all seen quite a lot of him. I don't know what his value is. He's contracted till 2026, so not too long left on his contract. An interesting one. What do you think about it, Simon, in terms of, I guess, if you want to add anything on Taiwo, feel free to, but primarily on Wissa as a potential Forest player?
I would love to see the negotiations, seeing how much Brentford hated negotiating with us over Brennan Johnson and all of that deal that never happened. I mean, great player, right? He scores lots of goals. Probably the kind of profile of striker forward we would want, because he's different to Wood. He could play central if Wood's injured, but he could play from either flank as well, which I think makes a bit more sense than what we've currently got in Wood and Taiwo. Are quite similar in terms of they are big hold-up style strikers. I know they have their nuances and their differences, but I would think it would be a great signing. Whether we can pull it off, and I know that Arsenal are interested as well, and they've just lost Gabriel Jesus. So if they're very serious about getting a striker in, they've probably got a bit more money and pulling power than us, despite our relative league positions being very close at the moment. It would mean he doesn't have to leave London if he goes to Arsenal. I would be very happy with that kind of signing. I think it'd be a great one, especially as he knows the league as well. He kind of can hit the ground running. Yeah, if he came in before the end of January, I would expect him to get 6, 7, 8 goals for us before the end of the season.
Yeah, I think Simon makes a pertinent point there, Pete, about the versatility. Ivan Toney was the central striker for years, and Wissa played on either side of him with Mbeumo, who's a great player as well. But he's been the main man this season through the middle, so he can do that job really effectively. Difficult deal to do, though, do you think, overall?
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised to see it happen for all the reasons that Simon said and the various difficulties of it. I mean, you can't see Brentford being desperate to sell their star striker to a Premier League rival in January of all times, can you? But then, there are some mitigating circumstances to that. As you say, contractual situation isn't ideal. You aren't desperate for your players to get lower than 2 years in the remaining contract. So, it may be the case that they end up having to, feeling that they need the money for him. I think you make a really good point, both of you, about the versatility. He's obviously played quite a lot of football off the left, particularly. The other thing that strikes me as probably quite useful for us is in this sort of similar vein to what you said, is he's had that situation where he's been behind Toney a lot at Brentford. But when Toney's been out, he's come straight in, hit the ground running. I think we saw, was it first season or second season, he scored at the City Ground, I think, didn't he, when Toney was out? And I think that's a pretty useful thing to have coming into a team where, I mean, he's not automatically going to be our number 9, is he? He's going to have a hell of a fight on his hands, one that he could potentially win, but certainly a big fight on his hands. And it would be pretty useful to have someone that has experience of coming straight in, battling for that sort of role, and then hitting the ground running when they do. You obviously know that he can do it at this level. I think he fits us very nicely. He's a real finisher, which I think is something that, I mean, it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but we don't create an awful lot of chances, and we've needed Chris Wood to be incredibly efficient, and I think Yoane Wissa is the same, outperforms his XG, I think, and has done that pretty consistently. I think if there's a deal there to do, I'm no doubt that he improves us. I'm sort of not sure about whether it's definitely feasible given the amount of money that it might take, given that it's dealing with Brentford, the Premier League rival. He's 28 obviously already, so you have to be a little bit careful about how much money you spend on him with PSR and such like. But no doubt whatsoever, if he's in our squad tomorrow, it's a significant improvement.
This is a difficult question, a bit of a stick your finger in the air and see what the wind's blowing, which way the wind's blowing. So what do you think he's worth, and what do you think about him as a player?
this is a dreamland signing for me. I think if Arsenal want him, they get him. I think it's a little bit harder for us to do, giving our relative clout compared to the draw of living in London, established Champions League side, and everything else. But this is the type of player we need to sign if we're going to move past Taiwo in the way that we described yesterday. And I dare say if he's first on the list, there's 2 or 3 other lookalikes there that we could go after if this doesn't come off, such has been the quality and depth of our recruitment planning and execution in recent years. What's he worth? Probably puts pressure on his club to leave, probably declares that he would like to move in this window if there's interest from top 5 clubs like ourselves and Arsenal. 2 years left on his contract, risk of leaving for free, end of the 25-26 season. I think it still takes 35 million to get this one done.
Yeah, that's a reason. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing. That's a lot of money. You know, you're selling Taiwo's cover PSR and then you're signing a 28-year-old for that. So, and I think it's a difficult deal to do. So we'll see how it pans out. But I think he's a really good player and exactly the kind of player I would certainly love us to sign. Elsewhere in that report by John Percy in the Telegraph, he talks about interest in Omobamidele, as mentioned, Leeds, Sheffield United and teams abroad. Says Emmanuel Dennis is likely to go. There must be some concrete interest if he's going to say likely. I saw there was some from abroad, but that will be good. No one else will go, including Harry Toffolo, who he mentions by name. I think that would be a successful window if this comes together, Simon, wouldn't it? One striker in, whether Taiwo goes or not. I guess it sounds more like Taiwo is going to go and one striker will come in. And then you get on with Bamidele, either a loan move or a permanent move. And Emmanuel Dennis, someone buys him. I mean, that's success, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you forget that Dennis is still a player. Whether he's even in Nottingham, who knows? If we find someone to buy him, then brilliant. He's not part of the 25 squad at the moment, so it doesn't make any difference there. But we would have to, if we do want to get players in, obviously we are now at the limit, so someone has to go to be replaced by someone else. I think that's all very sensible. You don't want to. There's no need for us to seemingly sell for PSR issues. There's no need for us to sell because players aren't performing. With Omobamidele, he deserves to have some football, and he's behind a load of other players at the moment. So, yeah, a loan move, but I could see it being a permanent move, to be honest, because with the emergence of Zach Abbott as well, I don't know quite if he's ever going to kind of get into that starting 11 for us. And yeah, Taiwo, I could see it being done, right? We probably, as we've discussed, need a slightly different profile of striker to be alongside Wood, and Taiwo isn't that. And love Taiwo and everything that he's done for us over the last 2 or 3 seasons. But if West Ham are coming in and saying here's 15-20 million pounds for Taiwo, I'd probably say okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a growing consensus. Certainly, that's a good point as well about Abbott. This is cynical, but if there's a homegrown player who you can get into your 11, and there's an incentive to do it ever more these days, and if he's got the potential, and Omobamidele's in front of him, then you can move Omobamidele out the way. I think with the way we are now, so I think a permanent move would certainly make sense on that front, definitely. Right, just before we talk about a couple of other quick transfer bits before we go, thank you very much to Home Move Estate Agents and Ben Sales for their support. I don't have a property this week, probably because I messed up last week's one so horrifically. He's decided not to send me one, but thanks to Ben for all their support. If you're looking to buy or sell, check out the link in the description, and they are 5-star rated on Google, of course. Right, a couple of other bits of transfer rumours just to round up really quickly in 5 minutes. We were linked with Gabriel Sara by Turkish media, 25-year-old central midfielder. He cost Galatasaray 20 million, I read. He scored 2 goals and got 6 assists in 16 games this season. Had a really good spell at Norwich, 21 goals, 17 assists in 96 games. We've been linked with a couple of other midfielders, which I'll get onto, but I wrote it down, Pete, 'cause I know you're a fan of his, aren't you?
Yeah, he was one that I've been hoping that Forest might make a move for the last couple of years. I mean, massive cliche alert, absolute wonderful effort. One of the things I really like about him, I've seen him playing and excelling as a sort of deep line playmaker, 8, 10, wide off the right. He's really versatile and he's so talented. I think he can do pretty much everything on the ball. I think in this sort of Nuno squad, having that sort of versatility is huge for us, isn't it? And we've talked about that already in potential signings. Someone who can be an option for us coming off the right, adding control. He can be an option in one of the deep positions. He could be a replacement at 10. I mean, it's worth caveating with all of this with it's the Turkish media, so you might wonder if there's even any point in us talking about it. But if him and Yilmaz both want to pop over, I'd be pretty happy with that. I mean, if you want to, there's a goal that Sarah scored in the Championship for Norwich. I think it was against Rotherham. An unbelievable volley from just outside the box. So I'd thoroughly recommend having a look at that if you want to get an idea for what he can do. But I think he can pretty much do everything. He carries the ball. His passing is unreal. There's lots and lots of clips and moments from the Championship where he splits defences and midfields with through balls. A player I really like. I think he'd be a brilliant addition for us if possible. But whether there's anything in it, I have no idea.
The start that excited me was the comparison with what he did at Norwich with what Brennan Johnson did for us in our promotion season. Brennan had 25 goal involvements. 16 goals, nine assists. In his championship season, his full championship season, 23-24, Sora had 13 goals, 12 assists. So the impact on that team, which wasn't as successful as ours, demonstrates what he could be with better players wrapped around him. But everything that Pete said rings true just from a quick look at his YouTube highlights. Wonder of a left foot. I think probably relies on taking corners and free kicks, Pete, for his assist stats. That'd be a battle for him at Forest, albeit he's got that left foot option. But the range of passing and the types of goals he's scoring suggests that he's a real prospect.
And a real long range threat as well, which is something that I don't think we've got an awful lot of. I mean, you just don't see Forest scoring or even taking those opportunities from outside the box very often. So it might be a slight point of difference for us.
I've got a friend who supports Norwich, so I asked him for a bit of insight on him. And interestingly, the first thing he said on his list of reasons why he's such a great player was he's a really humble and well-liked person, which just rang true for me with our recruitment at the moment. We sign really good players, but we sign good people as well, seemingly at the moment. And it's all about the squad harmony and togetherness. And obviously he's Brazilian as well, so kind of fits in well with our little group of Brazilian and Portuguese speakers. So yeah, I think for that reason, on top of what the other guys have said about him being brilliant at football, interesting one.
One other player we were linked with the other day is Richard Rios, a Palmeiras midfielder, central midfielder, or can play defensive midfield. Been linked with loads of Premier League clubs. I did look at him a bit, but I don't watch South American football. I don't watch Copa America, but Nathan Joyce does. And he was on here speaking about him last summer and on his podcast when I watched it, his whole panel, and they weren't massively high on him. They said that he'd had a good Copa America, but he wasn't a star in the Palmeiras team. And I messaged Nathan to see if his opinion had changed. And from his messages here, it hasn't really. He says he's great going forwards, but he needs bodies around him to work. His defensive stats aren't great. People got carried away with how good he was in the Copa America. We've got Danilo, so I don't really think we need him. And then he says he wouldn't put him in the team ahead of Anderson, Danilo, or Dominguez. Doesn't say he's going back to our opinion here. We know he loves Dominguez. So that was Nathan's thoughts on that one. He's available for about 16.5 million. And I don't know much about Richard Rios at all, so I'll bow down to Nathan's opinion. And also, he's linked with everyone. I think he's got a very busy agent. So we'll see how that one develops. Didn't want to focus on that one too much. Obviously, we're interested in Douglas Luiz as well, reportedly. Are you surprised by all these midfielder links, Pete, or not?
I don't know, to be fair. I mean, I think there is a potentially sort of missing piece of the puzzle in there for Forest in terms of going to another level, which sort of sounds like a mad thing to say, given that we're performing at such a high level right now. But I think the spot next to Anderson is an opportunity for us to improve. But I also do think that it's going to take a hell of a signing to improve that option, and it's not an easy one. I think you're probably looking to one of those guys that comes from Ligue 1, perhaps maybe you need to hack into Brighton's scouting system and find out where they got their intel on Bissouma and then Caicedo and then Baleba, who all end up being tens of millions of pounds and fantastic in those roles. I think if we could get somebody of that sort of ilk, I think it would massively improve us potentially and could unlock the rest of the team to, I guess, have that sort of platform to really go out and express themselves. That sort of genuine holding player who can just get about the pitch is an absolute physical specimen. That's what I'd really like to see. I just think it's such hard business to do. And on the links, I don't know whether some of these players that we're talking about really are that kind of player. I mean, Douglas Luiz has some of that to his game. I'm less convinced on him than everyone else, I think, who's spoken about him, because it just feels like a very expensive deal for somebody who I don't think is going to improve us as much as we would ideally want. Definitely a good player who probably gets in our starting 11, but I'm not sure for the sort of cost benefit analysis whether it's necessarily there. And Gabriel Sara's not that sort of player. He's someone who could come in and add real control and hopefully make us a better team in possession, more of a threat, able to unlock teams that don't come to the City ground with a great deal of ambition and that sort of thing. So it certainly helps, but I don't think he's the sort of player that I see as really taking that next step in our sort of development. I think we need a real monster in there if we can find one from somewhere.
Just lastly, before we go to final thoughts on today then, Thames, do you think the answer could come from within? If we all agree that in the longer term, someone's play alongside Anderson is the thing we want, do you see anyone in the squad who can do that for years to come? And I suppose I'm thinking of Danilo and Sangare, who are the two who aren't in the team now, or do we have to buy?
You have to buy, because whatever level you're at, whatever results you're getting, as we're finding now, people are always going to ask the question, who's the weakest member of our 11, and then seek to improve that position through recruitment. So the fact we've just had a big debate there about the merits of Yates or Dominguez, Marina or Williams, probably suggests they're the two spots we'd look to recruit to. It's slightly different with Chris Wood because he's flying, but we know there's kind of paper thin backup. But that's the other item on our shopping list. So no, I don't think that question will ever stop being asked. Who should we recruit to make this team better? I think that's the first method of doing it. Whatever we keep these two centre halves, we're not looking to recruit someone who's first team ready, are we? As long as we can retain Murillo and Milenkovic and the Real Madrid cash doesn't come knocking, that's our centre half pairing, for example. So no, I think there'll always be a need to recruit, and we're doing it from a position of strength now and potential European qualification, which opens up a level of salary, a type of player, and a stable of agent that wouldn't even have known where Nottingham was 2 years ago.
Can I just quickly add, Matt? I think on Danilo, I think if he was fit and firing right now, I'd be looking to have him in this team for the Southampton game, playing alongside Anderson. I'd love to see what they can do as a partnership against sides that we're expected to go out and dominate against. Danilo gives us something extra in that he can operate in that deeper role, but really passing through the lines. And I think that would potentially make a big difference when we are looking to get on the ball, to dominate, to unlock sides. That's something that we could look at, but I don't think you'd be particularly confident going into a game like Liverpool with Danilo and Anderson playing in there. And I guess there's a sort of horses for courses element with that. It's a shame that he's not fit right now, and hopefully we can get some minutes into him, because I think that's a partnership in a few games that would be really exciting to see.
So to that point, the route for Sangare back into our 11 looks almost impossible, doesn't it? Just a stockpile of central midfielders. And if we're going to rebalance this squad, something has to give. Someone has to go.
That's a good point. Please, go on.
I was just going to add, I think the reality with Danilo and Sangare, they've had really long injuries. We're probably not going to see a great deal of them this season. I don't think Danilo will play, or maybe even be in a squad again until Exeter. And Sangare seemingly isn't even training with the first team at the moment. I think Nuno's mentioned he's kind of running, but not in contact training. And to Temps's point, we are, we've got 16, 17 massive Premier League games to go. I can't see how those guys get a place, maybe onto the bench at some point. But we're going to be picking our best 11, and we're going to be putting our best 7 or 8 or 9, whatever it is, options on the bench. And I just think that they've had two massive injuries. I think they've got too much to do in to force their way back into the team, probably until the summer.
Yeah. Pete raised a good point there about Danilo and Anderson, I think. There's a wider point about how teams set up against us. If the people who are playing us were a bit more humble and just sat off, that will present us with a different challenge. And they're the two who could break it down. But no one's done that yet. I mean, Liverpool weren't going to come to the City Ground and do that, but I don't think so. I don't know about Southampton, the new manager, but yeah, I'm surprised more teams haven't just challenged us to break them down and let us have the ball. But that's a wider point. We might pick up on that another time. A couple of quick housekeeping bits very quickly before we go. I've seen a few things on Twitter saying that the club are going to refund all the people who were stuck outside the Upper Bridgeford before the Luton game. They're going to give them a refund for credit to get tickets or in the club shop, I guess. So well done to them for that, although they haven't officially confirmed it. And this was from a few days ago, but should mention it as well. Evangelos Marinakis has purchased 72 billion shares in Nottingham Forest. That's a further £72 million in loan turned into shares, which is great for PSR and associated party transactions and all the stuff we've discussed before, but important to mention that. Right, Simon Bristow, any final thoughts, anything you want to add before we depart?
Yes, I'm just going to do a quick shout out for Matt Oldroyd, who people will know started Forza Garibaldi with Greg. He's written a book called Trailblazers, which is it's a history of Forest, but it's not a history that you've kind of seen or heard before. I've been lucky enough that Matt sent me clips, little excerpts from what he's been writing over the last kind of 18 months, 2 years, and it is an exceptional read, and it is unbelievably detailed. The research that he's done, my hat's off to him for all of the weird and wonderful people he's spoken to around the world to kind of piece all of this story of Forest together. I think he's done a few tweets today from the Forza account, kind of telling people where they can pre-order it. It comes out later in the month. Having been lucky enough to read parts of it already, I would highly recommend it. It's an exceptional book.
Subject to everything coming together with Matt and Greg, they'll be on next Tuesday. Well, Matt will certainly be on next week, I'm sure, but I think Matt and Greg might be on together. So we'll talk that book. We'll talk a bit of Forza as well, I think. But yeah, Matt should be on next Tuesday to preview that more, as Simon rightly highlights. Pete Blackburn, anything for you before we go?
No, I pre-ordered Trailblazers this morning when I saw Matt's thread on the Forza account. It looks like it's going to be a hell of a read, and I can't wait to get stuck into it. But no, nothing else from me. Pleasure to be on again. I look forward to the next one, and hopefully we get a big old stonking victory on Sunday.
Hopefully so. I think Monday's lineup hopefully is Kelvin and then a couple of the regular guys, potentially who are on this panel today, but we shall see. And a post-match show on Saturday. Ooh, I haven't sorted anyone out for that apart from Chris Elmer yet. Sunday, sorry, but obviously we'll do that as well. Temps, anything for you before we go?
Just my newfound Greg-esque confidence in this football club. I've never been more convinced, despite last night's results, which weren't to our favour, that we're a top 5 side and we'll enjoy Champions League football next season. Kind of pride myself on being the realist, but even I'm getting a little bit carried away based on nothing other than what I've seen from the side this season. Let's hope that this isn't clipped up and used to embarrass me by a bunch of Southampton fans, but I think the weekend's result will compound that, and I just feel really good about where the club and the team's at the minute.
What's your rolling points total now, Thames? What are we expecting?
High 60s, and I think that'll be enough. I think 68 points gets us to where we need to be, and I think it's more than within our range to achieve that.
Excellent. I've just seen a WhatsApp, which I won't say where it's from, but suggesting Brentford will want 50 million quid for Wissa, which is quite a lot of cash. I don't know if anyone would go that high, but
that's definitely not going to be happening.
No, that's an interesting sum, certainly.
In other fun news, Matt, apparently John Joe Shelby's on trial at Burnley.
In court or on the pitch?
Football-wise.
There you go. What a note to end on. Like I say, back tomorrow with an opposition preview, hear more about Southampton and if the fans are there, I think they've got a chance in this one, or if they're resigned to the inevitable of relegation, not this game. So yeah, do check that out, and then back on Sunday as normal. Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure.
Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Michael Temple, thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas. See you soon.
Yeah, have a good day, everyone. If we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.